There's something unsettling about driving at night. The empty roads, the shadows just beyond your headlights, and the feeling that maybe, just maybe, you're not as alone as you think. These are three true stories, told by the people who lived them, of nighttime drives that started out ordinary and turned into pure horror. My name's Tyler Blake. This happened about 6 years ago, back when I was 20 and still making some pretty dumb financial decisions. I had just spent the weekend visiting my cousin in Salt Lake City, and I was driving back home to Boise, Idaho. It's about an 8-hour drive if you don't stop much, but things never go that smoothly, do they? I had planned to hit the road early, maybe around noon, but my cousin convinced me to hang out for one last meal. We grabbed burgers and took our sweet time, and I didn't actually get going until after 3 p.m. Then, halfway through Utah, there was a pileup on the interstate, 6 cars at least. That delay alone cost me nearly 2 hours. By the time I got back on the road, it was pitch black and I still had 4 hours left. I didn't have the budget for a motel. Back then, I was working 2 part-time jobs just to scrape by. So I figured I'd push through, crank some music, grab an energy drink along the way, and tough it out. I'd driven that route before. Mostly highway, not a lot of traffic after dark, and cell service was decent if you stuck to the main roads. Somewhere just past the state line into Idaho, I noticed a car behind me. It was one of those older sedans, maybe a dark green or black, hard to tell at night. At first, I didn't think anything of it. We were on a long, lonely stretch of Highway 84, and it's not unusual to have the same car behind you for a while. What did catch my attention, though, was that it stayed behind me for a long time, like really long. An hour went by, maybe more, and that car never passed me. I wasn't driving particularly fast, maybe 5 over the limit, but there were plenty of opportunities to overtake if someone wanted to. Every time I looked in the mirror, those same headlights were there. Not tailgating, not flashing or anything aggressive, just there, quiet. Steady, watching. Still, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe they were heading to the same town. Maybe they were nervous about driving at night and just liked sticking behind another car. I was trying not to overthink it. The highway at night can play tricks on your mind, especially when you've been driving for hours and your body's running on gas station snacks and half a bottle of water. But still, something about it nagged at me. I pulled into a small gas station near Mountain Home around 11 p.m. It was one of those sketchy 24-hour stops with flickering lights and a soda machine that looked like it hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. I parked under the brightest light I could find and went inside to grab an energy drink and use the restroom. When I came back out, I saw the same car, parked across the road. Not at the gas station, not even in the lot, just there, in the dark, lights off. Engine idling. I stopped mid-step, trying to make out who was inside, but the windows were tinted and the car was too far away. They didn't get out, didn't honk, didn't move, just sat there. Again, I tried to shake it off. Maybe they were just resting. Maybe I was just paranoid. I got back in my car and pulled onto the road, keeping my eyes on the mirror. And sure enough, within 30 seconds, those same headlights appeared behind me. At that point, my stomach started to twist. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. This wasn't a coincidence. That car had followed me for over an hour, parked in the dark across from the gas station. And now they were right behind me again. Same distance, same quiet persistence. I kept telling myself to stay calm. Don't speed. Don't slam on the brakes. Don't give them a reason to react. Maybe they'd turn off at the next exit. Maybe they were just weird. I took a few deep breaths, adjusted the rearview mirror, and kept driving. About 45 minutes later, I saw a rest stop coming up. Just one of those small pull-offs with bathrooms and a vending machine. Lit by a few sad yellow lights, surrounded by nothing but black pine trees and open sky. It wasn't ideal, but my legs were cramping, and I needed to pee. Bad. I slowed down and signaled to pull in. The car behind me didn't signal, but it did slow down too. I parked near the bathroom entrance and left the car running, door half open. I stood outside for a few seconds, pretending to stretch, casually watching the highway. The other car didn't come into the lot. It stopped, just at the mouth of the entrance, engine on, headlights still pointing my direction. They didn't move. I stared, maybe for 30 seconds, maybe longer, waiting for them to get out, waiting for them to turn around, waiting for anything that made sense. Nothing. That was when the fear really hit me. Not movie fear, not fun haunted house fear, real primal fear, the kind that makes your hands tingle and your heartbeat move up into your throat. I climbed back into my car, locked the doors, and peeled out of that rest stop faster than I should have. Tires chirped. My drink spilled across the console. I didn't care. I just wanted to get the hell out of there. Back on the road, the headlights reappeared almost instantly. I drove faster, 10 over the limit, then 15. I took an off-ramp at the next exit, looped around a frontage road, and got back on the highway a few miles down. I was hoping, praying that the car would be gone when I merged again, but it wasn't. It was like they were glued to me. I started to panic. The next city, my hometown, was still a good 2 hours away, and the towns between here and there, barely more than dots on the map, mostly closed up after 10 p.m., and definitely not the kind of places where you want to be stranded. I didn't know what to do. My brain was buzzing, switching back and forth between fight and flight. Call the police? What do I even say? That I'm being followed? That someone hasn't done anything yet, but it feels wrong? I needed to be sure, so I decided to test them. About 20 minutes later, I spotted a scenic pullout on the other side of the road. One of those little gravel lots people use to stretch or take photos during the day. I slowed down, passed it, then pulled into a similar one a quarter mile ahead. They did the same, except they pulled into the one behind me, across the highway, facing my car, lights still on, still just watching. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes. I didn't get out. I didn't even move, just stared at the glow of their headlights in my mirror. They didn't budge. Eventually, I took off again, and like clockwork, they followed. By the time I got within an hour of home, I wasn't just tired, I was wired. Every time I changed lanes, they did. Every exit I skipped, they skipped. I even tried slowing down well below the speed limit to let them pass, but they didn't take the bait. They just hung back, like they were waiting for something. I finally broke and called my parents. Hands shaking, I put the phone on speaker and kept one eye on the mirror. My mom answered, "Hey, everything okay?" I laughed, one of those brittle, half-sane laughs. "No, not really. I think I'm being followed." I gave her the short version. My dad got on the line and told me to listen carefully. "Don't go straight home," he said. "Drive downtown, make 4 left turns, back to back. If they're still behind you after that, it's not a coincidence." It was a smart move. 4 lefts makes a square. No reason anyone should still be behind you unless they're really trying to be. So I did exactly that. Downtown was mostly empty, just a few late-night businesses and one diner still lit up. I hit the first left, slow and steady, then the second, third, still behind me. The 4th left put me back on the original street. They were still there. That was the moment my brain accepted what my gut had known for the past 2 hours. This wasn't someone lost or heading the same direction or nervous about driving at night. This was someone targeting me. My dad's voice came back on, calm but firm. "Go to the police station, right now." So I did. Luckily, I was only about 5 minutes away. I stayed in the right lane the whole time, hand gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles were white. I could feel my pulse in my teeth. As I turned into the parking lot of the precinct, the car behind me did something I'll never forget. They gunned it, no hesitation, just floored it, peeled out across the intersection at what had to be at least 90 miles per hour, blowing through 2 red lights and disappearing into the night. Gone. Just like that. I parked and went inside, still shaking, and told the officer at the front desk everything. He nodded, asked a few questions, and said they'd send out a patrol car to sweep the area. He took down my license plate and description of the vehicle, but I never heard anything back. No follow-up, no arrest, no mystery solved. To this day, I have no idea who that person was or what they wanted. Maybe they were just messing with me. Maybe they thought I was someone else. Or maybe it could have ended a lot worse if I hadn't gone to the station when I did. Whatever the reason, it shook me. Now, every time I drive alone at night, especially on long trips, I pay attention. I count the turns, I watch the mirrors, and if someone follows me for more than a few miles, I take a detour, just in case. Because once, someone followed me for 4 straight hours, and I still don't know why. My name's Rebecca Morgan. This happened over 20 years ago, but I still remember every detail like it was yesterday. It was one of those nights you don't forget, not because anything huge or dramatic happened, but because it settled into your bones and never quite left. It was late, past midnight, and I was driving us home from a family dinner at my sister's place in Vermont. My husband, Scott, was in the passenger seat, fast asleep with his head tilted toward the window. Our son, Jacob, who was maybe 8 or 9 at the time, was passed out in the back seat, bundled up in his jacket and a fleece blanket. It had started snowing lightly about an hour earlier, just enough to coat the trees and dust the edges of the road. We were taking a back route through the countryside, the kind of road that winds past old barns, frozen creeks, and trees that crowd in a little too close to the shoulder. It was the kind of drive that's beautiful during the day and uneasy at night. There were no other cars, no streetlights, just the occasional reflector post and the dull rhythm of the wipers pushing snow off the windshield. The heater was humming low, and for a while, the only sound in the car was the soft breathing of the 2 people I love most in this world. I remember thinking how peaceful it all felt, how lucky I was, how quiet and still and perfect that moment was. And then I rounded a curve, slowly, carefully, and something darted out of the woods. I hit the brakes out of instinct, not a full stop, just enough to get my foot off the gas and take in what I thought I saw. A girl, a young girl, maybe 10 or 11 years old, came out from the tree line with her arm raised, like she was going to throw something, maybe a snowball, maybe just waving, I didn't know. But we locked eyes for a split second, just a flash, and I swear to you, there was nothing playful about her expression. Her face was twisted, not in pain, not in fear, but in something else entirely. Something angry, fierce, wild, like a silent scream frozen in place. It was only a moment, and then we were past her. I looked up into the rearview mirror, trying to catch another glimpse, maybe to see if she'd run off or crossed the road, but there was nothing there. No one, no movement, no tracks in the snow, no sign that anyone had ever been there at all. I gripped the steering wheel tighter and sat up straighter. My heart was pounding, and my stomach had that cold falling feeling, like when you miss a step in the dark. For the first time that night, the road didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt empty, hollow, like it had swallowed the sound and was holding its breath. I didn't wake Scott. I didn't say anything out loud. I just kept driving. But in the back of my mind, a little voice had already started whispering, that wasn't normal. I kept driving, but that image, her face, that frozen snarl, was stuck in my head like a bad echo. It didn't feel like a memory. It felt like something still happening just behind me, just out of reach. I kept checking the mirrors, half expecting to see someone running down the shoulder or emerging from the trees. But there was nothing. Only the road, the snow, and that strange, heavy quiet. Scott stirred a little beside me but didn't wake up. Jacob shifted in the back seat, mumbling in his sleep. I envied them both. I felt like I was carrying something now, something invisible that had slipped into the car and settled somewhere deep in my chest. We were only a few miles from home when it happened again. There wasn't any warning, no flicker in the headlights, no shadow stretching out in the distance. Just suddenly, she was there, an old woman, in the road. She came from nowhere, directly in front of the car. Her arms were slightly out, her head tilted just a bit too far to one side, like someone looking down at a dropped coin. Her clothing was dark, loose, maybe a coat or a shawl, but there wasn't time to make out details. My headlights lit her up for a split second, and then I screamed, slammed the brakes, felt the seatbelt dig into my shoulder, Scott jolted awake with a gasp. What? What happened? I braced myself for the sound, for the thud, for the impact, for anything. But there was nothing. No sound, no jolt, no shudder, just the soft scrape of tires sliding over fresh snow. The car rolled to a full stop, and for a few seconds, no one said a word. Then I threw it in park, blinked, and looked back down the road. Empty. The road was completely empty. There was no woman, no shadow, no one. Scott leaned forward, rubbing his face, trying to wake up properly. Did you hit something? I shook my head slowly. She was right there. An old woman. I swear, she was standing in the middle of the road. He looked at me, then looked behind us, then back at me. Are you sure? I saw her. We sat there for a moment in the stillness, engine humming low, snow tapping gently against the windshield. I wasn't sure what I expected. Maybe to see her slowly walking into the woods, maybe to find a scarf on the ground, maybe something to prove I wasn't losing it. But there was nothing, not even a footprint. That was when I felt the real fear kick in. Not the kind that hits you all at once, but the kind that spreads, slow and steady. It was like the cold had gotten inside me, and it wasn't going away. Scott must have seen it on my face because he reached over and took my hand. His voice was low, serious. Let's just go home. I nodded, shifted the car into drive, and for the first time in my life, I was afraid of getting there. The rest of the drive home couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 minutes, but it felt like an hour. I kept both hands tight on the wheel, eyes flicking between the windshield and the mirrors, my mind running in circles. Scott didn't say much. He stayed awake now, alert, glancing out the window every few seconds like he was expecting something else to appear. Jacob was still asleep in the back, thank God. I don't know how I would have explained any of it to him. When we finally turned onto our street, everything looked normal, familiar. Porch lights glowing, cars in driveways, little piles of snow building up on hedges and mailboxes. Our house sat at the end of the block, just like always. And yet, it didn't feel like relief. It felt like crossing the finish line of a race I didn't know I'd started. I parked in the driveway and turned off the ignition. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I said quietly, I swear to you, she was right there. Scott nodded. I believe you. And I saw your face. You didn't imagine that. We sat in silence a little longer. Then he said, almost to himself, what the hell was that? I didn't have an answer. Still don't. We got Jacob out of the back seat and carried him inside. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying both moments over and over in my head. The girl with the twisted expression, the woman who vanished mid-step. The next day, I went back to the spot where it happened. I know that sounds cliche, but I had to see it again in the daylight. Had to prove to myself that the road was real, that it wasn't just my mind playing tricks. There was nothing, no footprints, no dropped items, no disturbed snow, no broken branches or signs anyone had been near the tree line. It was just a quiet stretch of country road. I thought about reporting it, but what would I even say? I saw 2 people who weren't really there. That wouldn't get me anything but a puzzled look and maybe a wellness check, so I let it go. But I never forgot. Even now, over 2 decades later, I still think about it every time I drive at night, especially when it's snowing, especially when it's quiet, especially when I'm alone. And every once in a while, I find myself checking the mirrors more than I should, just in case. My name's Mark Granger, and this happened maybe 10 years ago, during a winter break road trip with my family. It's not a ghost story, not exactly a horror story either, but it's something I still think about a lot, especially when I'm driving at night on an empty stretch of highway. We were on our way home from a long weekend in South Dakota, visiting my wife's folks. It was me driving, my wife Kayla in the passenger seat, and our 3 kids all bundled up and passed out in the back seat. The sun had set about 2 hours earlier, and we were still at least 3 hours from home, somewhere in the middle of the Nebraska prairie, nothing but dark sky and flat land in every direction. I was cruising at around 65, maybe a little more, just trying to make good time. It wasn't snowing, but it was cold enough that the frost had started creeping along the edge of the windshield. The road ahead was dead straight. No curves, no exits for miles. The kind of road where your brain starts to go on autopilot and your eyes scan the distance for anything interesting. Billboards, headlights, even fence posts. That's when I saw him. At first, I thought it was just a shadow, or maybe a post that had gotten knocked over. But as we got closer, it was clear. It was a man. He was standing on the side of the road, on the shoulder just past one of those little reflector poles. Not walking, not hitchhiking, just standing there. Arms sort of loose at his sides, body angled slightly away from the road like he'd just wandered out and stopped moving. Kayla saw him too. We both kind of sat up a little straighter, looking at each other like, "Did you see that?" The guy didn't react to the car at all. Didn't wave, didn't flinch. He wasn't facing us completely, but enough that I could see his face in the split second we passed him. He looked dazed, like he wasn't fully there. He didn't seem drunk exactly, just off, maybe sick, maybe confused. He had a jacket on, but nothing heavy enough for how cold it was outside. By the time we passed him, the kids were still asleep, and Kayla turned to me. "Should we go back?" she asked. I was already slowing down. There was no town nearby, nothing for at least 30 miles back, and probably 40 ahead. Whoever that guy was, he wasn't just out for a walk, but we couldn't turn around right there. It's a highway, divided, no crossovers. I had to drive for another few miles before we found an off-ramp, then looped back around to head the opposite way. All in all, it probably took 15 minutes to get back to where we saw him. But when we did, he wasn't there. We slowed to a crawl, headlights sweeping over the shoulder, the ditches, even a bit into the field beyond. But there was no one. I pulled over where we thought we'd seen him, Kayla squinting out her window, me scanning the right side. I even got out of the car for a second just to get a better look. The cold hit me like a slap, dry and biting, the kind that makes your nose sting instantly. I walked along the edge of the road a few steps, calling out a soft, "Hello?" into the dark. Nothing. No footprints, no movement, no sign that anyone had been standing there just 15 minutes earlier. The field beside the road was wide open, short, dry grass and frozen dirt, stretching all the way to a distant tree line. I got back in the car, looked at Kayla and said, "I think we should call it in." She nodded. Even if he kept walking, in this cold, that's not good. So I grabbed my phone, looked up the number for the local sheriff's office. It was the next county over from where we lived, and called it in. I explained what we saw, where we were, and that we were worried the guy might be lost or disoriented. The dispatcher was polite, asked a few questions, and told me an officer would meet us there within 10 minutes. It didn't even take that long. A cruiser rolled up with its lights off, just headlights cutting through the dark, and a middle-aged officer stepped out. He introduced himself as Deputy Harris. Real friendly guy, calm voice, thick gloves, flashlight already in hand. We walked the edge of the highway together while Kayla stayed in the car with the kids who were miraculously still asleep. I told him everything, how the man looked, how he was standing, how we doubled back and found nothing. "Honestly," I said, "we weren't sure if we were overreacting, but something just didn't feel right." He nodded. "You did the right thing. Too many folks drive by and assume someone else will call." We searched the shoulder and the first 30 feet of the field, our flashlights cutting across patches of frost and tall weeds. Still no sign of him. "You sure it was this stretch?" Harris asked. "Pretty sure. It was dark and we were going fast, but we both saw him." "Well," he said, looking around, "this is the middle of nowhere. If he wandered out there..." He trailed off and looked toward the tree line, barely visible in the moonlight. "I'll call in another unit and see if we can get a thermal drone up before sunup," he said. "In the meantime, you've got 3 kids in that car, and it's getting colder. You should go ahead and get them home. We'll take it from here." I hesitated, but he was right. There wasn't much more I could do, and it was well past midnight. Kayla agreed. As we pulled away, I kept glancing at the mirrors, half expecting to catch a figure in the headlights one more time. But there was only empty prairie behind us. We got home around 2 a.m. The kids went straight to bed without even waking up. Kayla and I didn't say much. We were both tired, but also wired in that weird way when something doesn't sit right. I laid there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying that moment over and over. Just a second or two. A man standing on the side of the highway, like he didn't belong, like he wasn't supposed to be there at all. I kept wondering, what if we imagined it? What if he had turned and walked into a field right after we passed him? What if someone else had seen him, but hadn't stopped? I must have finally dozed off around 4, because when the phone rang the next morning, it startled both of us. It was around 8:30 a.m., and the call was from a local number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick up. "Mr. Granger?" It was Deputy Harris. "Yeah, that's me." "We found him," he said. I sat up straight. "What?" "That man you saw. We found him about a mile off the highway. He was in bad shape, hypothermic, barely responsive. Turns out he's diabetic. Blood sugar had dropped dangerously low. He'd been drinking the night before in town and wandered out on foot. Took the wrong road and got turned around." I didn't say anything for a second, just held the phone to my ear and let that settle in. "If you hadn't called," he continued, "he probably wouldn't have made it through the night. We got him to the hospital just in time." I felt a lump in my throat. My heart was pounding, not in fear this time, but in disbelief. Thank you," I said, not really sure what I meant by it. "Thanks for calling." "No, thank you," he said. "You saved a life last night." We hung up, and I just sat there on the edge of the bed, staring at the wall. I told Kayla. She got this look in her eyes, relief, pride, a little shock. Then she just reached over and grabbed my hand. Neither of us said it, but I know we were both thinking the same thing. What if we hadn't gone back? What if we'd just kept driving? It was a reminder that sometimes the scariest part of driving at night isn't what jumps out of the shadows. It's what you almost didn't see at all. If you've ever looked in your rearview mirror and felt a chill run down your spine, you're not alone. Thanks for joining us for tonight's ride. If you enjoyed these real horror stories, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to Mr. Rainy Night, and ring the bell so you never miss a new tale. And if you've experienced something you'll never forget, drop it in the comments below. Until next time, drive safe and watch the shadows.